Hey y'all. So I decided to get with the program and just show you what I've personally learned concerning Princess Diana's gravesite and everything. It's pretty interesting. Um, so before I didn't really know 100% sure she was passed away. There's always that possibility that people can be covering this thing up in a really an extensive way. I mean, more than we ever could realize, just to get her out of the limelight, the spotlight, for all these years. But it seems to me that there would be some kind of communication, but we wouldn't know about it with her two sons. Um, but anyway, it's kind of like the same with Michael Jackson, the same with Elvis Presley and all that other stuff. It would be the same thing. Um, if there would be any kind of communication, if she were actually truly alive, and they covered this thing up so well, they used records to falsify records and everything. And but you see the emotional distraught on some people's faces, like her driver and everything, Colin Titbut, and things like that. He was pretty distraught, it looked like, and I'm sure if the doctors could say anything about trying to resuscitate her and get that one guy Malit or something like that, he was an actual doctor, but he said something about trying to resuscitate her, things like that, and there seems to be a whole body of evidence to suggest that she either didn't make it, and there were police reports and stuff being made up and all that and other, and of course Harry and William read all that stuff, and they thought it was a bunch of garbage, and they do. It does seem to be holes in some of these things, but at the same time, there's some discussions that are not made, some things that are not said to give a 100% account. Hey, I saw her body. We saw that she was dead, other than that Colin Titbut. So anyway, I'm gonna show it on here real quick. What I watched earlier, and so it should still be on here. And we'll get to the quickly get to the to her grave, that somebody took a flyover drone that had flown over her grave, and you can see that there is actually a grave on there. Whether it's a mausoleum vault type thing, it's covered up. Two instances, but anyway, and the other thing about the grave over there at the church, the Spencer church, that's a bit crazy, because Charles Spencer goes out of his way to show you that on the floor in the cemetery, in the crypt, that there evidently is nothing indicating that even Dinah is buried there, and even if it were indicating that, because they opened the grave to get ready to put her body there, but he changed his mind and said, no, let's put her on the island, that way they won't come in ransacking the church knowing she's there. At least on the island she had more privacy, her body, that is. Anyway, so let's see here. Which one did I watch? So this is what Colin Titbut says.
If you're unsure or unaware of your eyeglass prescription, or if your prescription changes.
Morning to you guys.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming in. 20 years ago this month, it seems extraordinary now when you think back to it. What makes you want to talk about this? You've not talked about this at all until now. Why do you want to now talk about this?
I just felt that it was appearing every day in newspapers and various things, and I was listening to people, and that was an emotional day on the day that she died.
Moment you got the phone call, and
Yes, I can, vividly.
What was it like? Where were you?
I was in bed with my wife, and she answered the phone. I had a bit of banter with the guy on the other end, and then she looked round at me and said, I think you better get up and sit on the end of the bed and take this phone call. And it was a colleague from Balmoral who was telling me that Her Royal Highness was actually injured, and put the television on and you'll see. So that's what I did. You know, it was a bit of a shock. Got dressed and then went down to Kensington Palace.
So when did the news come through that it was even worse than you thought and you were summoned, I guess, to go to Paris?
Yes, it was quite difficult because Robin Cook, who was then the Foreign Secretary, was on the television giving what had happened. And he was explaining that she was injured. When in fact the Private Secretary, Michael, was telling the 6 of us in the office that sadly she'd died.
So at that point, they then say, we need to bring Diana back, and you're charged with going out there.
Yes.
How difficult was it, Colin, when you land in Paris and you've got this furore around what's happened because there's extraordinary circumstances, and then you have to walk into a room and that you see that your boss, someone who I'm sure you admired and thought the world of, was passed away and was lying on a table in a mortuary?
Yes, the 24 hours was quite difficult. Getting to Paris was fine. Getting to the embassy was great, except I didn't speak French. My wife speaks it fluently, which a phone helped. And I knew one of the military attachés, Brigadier Ritchie, who immediately came into the room, and he used to work with Princess Anne. So I was taken in to help, where I went to the hotel, and then I went to the hospital, and arrived at the hospital. Lots of people about. On I think it was the first floor, and there was a lot of people.
And in a way, the world was in shock, grief, disbelief, and you had to hold things together, didn't you? And you were the person that had to get practical. Yes,
I mean, I was an ex-inspector, but I did say that perhaps people are expecting lords, ladies and colonels in this in this particular instance, but we were dealt with by Sir Michael J. very, very well, and given everything that I needed, I was given.
But you had to sort of draw the curtains, turn on the fans, really practical things that in grief people hadn't thought of.
It's very difficult and emotional to see a person lying in a bed and not in a mortuary. And when I was in the room, which was very, very hot, I looked out of the window and I could see people on a roof. Now, whether they knew where the princess was, I don't know, but that worried me, so I got some blankets, because there was no curtains, and we put blankets along the windows, which made it even hotter in the room. And I then went and got some fans to try and cool the room down, and that one moment in my life which perhaps my professionalism was lacking a little bit, because as I turned round, the eyelashes and the hair of the princess were moving, caused by the fan. And that just struck me, just for
a second.
I had to turn away, think about it, and then grip myself back and get on with what I was doing.
Well, like everybody else, and you even more so probably, we were desperate for it not to be true. So the idea that potentially, you know, that this was all not true and that she was okay and she was going to survive was what we were after. Your relationship with her I think is fascinating. What was she like as a boss, and sort of how close do you think you became?
There was a line. You don't cross that line. You speak to when you're spoken to. And it is still very correct. She was still very royal. And yes, we were often together in the car, and it would be light conversation. She had a tremendous sense of humour. And wherever we went, I never had a crossword in the 2 years. Not one crossword. I think they went in too fast, but in the inquest, that was sorted out. I've driven through the tunnel myself. There are stanchions in the tunnel, which if you can be taken a little bit by, if you have 2 trains in a station, one moves out, you think you're moving. You go into fast where there's stanchions, it's getting a little bit worrying. So whatever happened, I perhaps a little bit too fast and being taken away with the lady in the back.
Did you feel a strange sense of responsibility and wished you were driving that day? And
yes, you always do that. You always do that, yes. That is not good to have in the mind.
Yeah.
And what are your memories of Princess Diana now? Because, of course, that was such an emotional time and 20 years ago, but when you think back and think of her legacy?
A great boss. I felt the last year from August the 28th when the divorce came through, that year up to her death, she felt to me, because I didn't work with her years ago as a police officer, I was with Princess Anne, but she was good. She seemed to be living a good life. and happy.
Do you think she will be proud of her boys and
Oh,
Kate?
tremendously. Tremendously, yeah. Really would be.
Colin, thank you very much for coming in and talking
pleasure.
to us this morning. It's been really...
Well, that was very interesting. And also we got, wait a minute, where am I thing now? Oh yeah, I like this one right here about Martin Bashir. And she also has distant relatives, or there was her grandmother there who looked just like her, or vice versa, she looked like her. You compare this one right here to this one right here, Cynthia Spencer, her grandmother, they look very similar. So here's the Althorpe estate, and it's got a nice flyover at the cemetery.
Tennessee homeowners, if you want to sell your house in 30 days or less, then listen up, because
I want to hear all that. Let's see if I can get this side here. This is pretty cool.
What began as a quiet, almost routine announcement from Buckingham Palace quickly spiraled into one of the most emotionally charged royal controversies of the decade.
Trying to fast forward a little bit. Okay, so now you see there's a grave itself, and I never knew that. And at the bottom of the island right there is a dude working on doing something or other. They clearly put that tarp on there so that drum wouldn't get the inscription, I suppose. It's like an old mausoleum type vault, something or other. And I thought it was in the ground. Clearly it's not. And you can see back over there. Oops. Back over to this side over here, there was that temple looking thing. And it's ironic enough that's been there since 1798. And that 200 years later is whenever this place right here would be open to the public, but not the island itself. The island it's all private property, but it was open to the public a couple months out of the year. Since July 1st, that's Diana's birthday. So if anybody swims over to this island, they can be prosecuted as trespassing on private property outside the property. It's already private, but it's open to public. I didn't look at the AI thing and it's giving me all this information. Also, there's this property in the Althorpe estate has a Roman villa on it that they recently found, and they're digging into it, and they're all that. So that's pretty interesting. You can imagine that road that Prince Charles took to first come see Sarah, this one way over here. He first used that road to come see Sarah, and then eventually Princess Diana. And it's odd too that I found actually that Princess Diana lived in Park House in Sandringham. They Sandringham estate because Francis and John Spencer, they lived in that apartment, well, not apartment, but that house. They had a tennis court and a pool and stuff like that. And even Charles Spencer remarked on it. That's where she was born at. And so was Francis, her mother. They were born there at the Park House and on Sandringham Estate. And what happened was in the 60s, later 60s, Francis had cheated on John Spencer, and eventually they got a divorce, and John got the custody of the kids, was Charles, Sarah, Jane, and Diana. So I don't know how the first two sisters were, whether they're old or how many years older they are than Diana. But Diana probably is either the second or third oldest, and Charles being the youngest. But anyway, it seems that that all happened in 1967, 69, something like that. And and Diana was a young child when all that happened, unfortunately, concerning her parents. And then in 1976 or 77 or something like that, they moved into the Althorpe house because John Spencer's father, Jack, had passed away. And so he got the title of Earl Spencer. And so they went to live there, and it had been a few years since living there. She had not long after, Prince Charles had come and seen Sarah, because evidently they knew each other based on at the Sandringham estate and everything, and being in the Park House. Diana used to play with Prince Charles's younger brothers, Edward and the other one, the Duke of York. I forgot his name. It was Edward and, that's not Philip, but is it Philip? I can't remember. But anyone, the one is always in trouble. The one is always making a mess of himself. But I think he married Sarah Ferguson or something like that. Now that we married Sophie. But anyway, so all that happened with them, and Prince Charles had come and visited Sarah, and then eventually he went from Sarah to Princess Diana over at the Althorpe estate. And so I don't know what that house is for. Maybe it's the horse carriages or something, the horse shed or horse stables or something like that. I don't know, or some other stuff. But anyway, it's pretty neat. So you can imagine he came down that road there for showing, come into the house. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Diana. I know that was terrible. But anyway, that's the road evidently they traveled. And I'm kind of curious of when this old lake was built myself. Because we know that it's probably built around the same time. I don't know. But being that the temple thing there, it was a commemoration of the Battle of the Nile that one of the Spencers put up. And so it had been there a long time. And what Charles had done, he'd put a likeness, that silhouette type of thing on there, and a quote that she had said about running to the aid of all people, and another one that he quoted himself on the other side. And then there's some commemorative bench there. So it's really not even a temple, it's just a thing commemorating a monument, commemorating the Battle of the Nile 200 years earlier. What's strange, though, is she died in 97, of course, but She died at 9:08. I think that's what they're saying, or rather, 9:08 is when there were something with 9:08. And so if you look at 9:08, you add it together is 17. And so the monument itself was made in 1798. I'm kind of getting into those numerology type things, but you know. And also, she pretty much dealt with the royal family, or had been a royal from, or she, you know, her time in London, rather. The time that she became famous, or people were taking pictures of her, rather, the paparazzi, to the time she died was about 17 years. I think it was like in September, if I'm not mistaken, something in September, until about August 31st, 1997. That was 17 years. So 9 and 8, 17, and the 1798 thing, that's pretty interesting. And then 908 is whenever the funeral started, at the Westminster Abbey, I guess. So 9 plus 8 is 17, and she had 17 years of being actually famous. And those last few years is when she really, really became famous. So anyway, I just thought that was pretty interesting. So anyway, that's probably. So you see the temple thing right there, and then that's where the boat ramp is, and you see again that's where the grave is. Some people made, and that's where that tomb. I always thought her grave was right there where that marker is, but it's not. It's definitely in the center of the island, and you can see a couple floating logs, and there's that dude walking around there. And so I suppose he got on the island and was doing some things, and he put that tarp on there so that's drone, so the guy making this drone flyover wouldn't get the inscription. So evidently Charles had given him permission, and then also somebody else. There's a couple of them that did drone flyovers. So, and there's another one where there's a blue tarp over the grave, over the mausoleum or vault. So you can definitely see there's something made of it. That little area right here is probably where they launched the boat from. Looks like that little thing right there is what probably holds the boat there, I suppose. Or that must have been the that must have been the place where the bridge, they had the bridge at one time whenever she had passed away, whenever they buried her. So you think, well, how in the world did they get that monument there? Likely that monument was already there. I don't know. That'd be interesting to know. I would love to get the answer on that. And of course, the her grave, her vault or whatever, how did they get that there? Maybe that was already there too. Maybe it was just they did something other where they could bury her inside of it, or there was that somebody might have been able to place a coffin inside of it sealed. I mean, that's what gets me. How in the world did they take a coffin that's almost 700 pounds with her body in it and get over that bridge? I just don't get that. There's just some things that if she's dead, then how do they do all that stuff? I just don't get it. So I mean, maybe they took the body out of this or something, I don't know, and put it in a smaller casket or something before. I don't know. It don't seem like they would have done that, but maybe there was like some kind of preparation there. I don't know. And it really doesn't say so much about it. It's not going to give any kind of information about it because it's all secretive stuff. But imagine 700 pounds, and these men, even at the funeral, there were 4 or 5 people on each side of that coffin, and even for them at the time, it was pretty heavy. They had a I remember watching the whole thing. There were these 4 or 5 soldiers on each side, had the bearskin hats, and they had to take the hats off and until they started marching, and they gave their hats to somebody, whatever, bearskin hats or helmets, and then they had to tote her body to the thing and all that, and then towed it to the hearse, and it looked to be really, really heavy. So anyway, it makes you wonder how in the world they put all that stuff on there. The other thing that don't mind it. So I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to this other one right here. Oh, where's the I wanted to show this last one here. I'm trying to get some sleep. This one right here. This will show you right here that if Princess Diana was buried in there, in the Spencer tombs, that it would have showed something to indicate where she might have been buried at. And they didn't bury her there. They opened a grave, a vault, to have her placed in there, but they didn't do that because Charles knew that people would be raiding this place and trying to take, some kind of memento or something, a piece of it. So that's why he had her buried on that island and everything.
As someone who did not grow up in a house like this, and in fact, who grew up in North America, it's been really interesting for me to learn about the British aristocracy, the Spencer family over the last 500 years, and English history. The churchyard where Charles's ancestors are buried set me on a path of discovery that I hadn't anticipated. It's the village church that the family attended and where they're all buried. It is one of those very solemn, sort of steeped in history places.
Every single person in here is a Spencer or married into a Spencer, becoming a Spencer. All of the people who are buried in here, they have a rich history behind them.
The very lifelike carvings of them sitting on top of those tombs, it's almost like you're actually getting to see them.
One of the joys I had was, because I love history, was going back through letters, diaries, accounts of the time and learning a bit about each of them, really. I think I sort of know something about all of these people around and below me.
So interesting to look at all the symbolism, isn't it?
It was very important back in the 17th, 16th century how you were preserved for posterity. There was a sincere belief in the afterlife, the sort of dignified treatment of bodies.
I think he was Catholic.
All the mementos that would have meant so much to them in life are here for posterity. The swords that they had, which they took into battle, the coronets they wore when they went to Parliament. This is incredible. This is a 500-year-old tomb of Sir John Spencer, who's very much the founder of the family, and this is his wife, Isabel. He established this as a tomb for his heirs, and he took, quite rightly, as the founder of this, prime position.
So you see that he showed the floor, well, the camera showed the floor, and some like some concrete had been around it. So evidently that's when they went to go bury her there, but they changed their mind. He changed their mind, and his mind, and buried her on the altar. And he talks about this here in just a second. He talks about his father and everything, not so much about Diana. Here's some pictures of Diana that are shown, but not he doesn't talk about her.
Near to the altar as possible. We know that he basically rebuilt the church and he established this tomb, this chapel for his family. I love the statue. I love the simplicity of it. This is a man who in 1519 was knighted by Henry VIII. He looks like an absolute stereotype of a Tudor man with that very severe haircut. And there he is lying in his armour. It's incredible. This man paid for the building of Althorp.
It's weird because during the guy many years ago, there's a fellow that that a cousin, they did some things on my side of the family, and a monumental brass kind of shows them my ancestors in England there about over 500 years ago, same time period, with their hands crossed and everything. It's like a petition to heaven, and stuff. And his wife, he was a clothier, and evidently this guy was too, but he was a knight, and so he talks about the sheep and everything that he had.
He was a magnificent sheep farmer. He made an enormous amount of money. We're looking at the founder and the female founder of the Spencer family. They gave their DNA to all of the dozens of other Spencers who were either below in the tomb that they designed or are actually in some of these finer pieces.
You really do feel it here, don't you? The longevity of the family.
Well, you do. In obviously a pre-photographic age, and when portrait painting was in its infancy, we still know what these people look like. We got a man with a proper Tudor haircut. We got a man with a late 16th century beard, and they're dressed for eternity with the Spencer coat of arms on the top of their shoulder. They're proud to be from this family, but at this final sort of repose, they're just hoping they're accepted into heaven. That's what this is about. Incredible, the faith that went into these places, So when my father died, they got rid of the concrete here and pulled this up.
See, that's another thing. If Diana was being buried there, she was buried there. Of course, he's not going to talk about it, but he's not going to allow that camera to be all over the floor. So evidently, she's not buried there.
And underneath is a large room. But it was overcrowded after 400 or 500 years. In the 50s or 60s, my grandfather had them sort of tidied up. A lot of them, there were some broken open that hadn't been tended to. And what was interesting was how many, he said so many of them still had straggles of red hair. The sort of family red hair was still visible.
They even talked about, in some cases, even AI was talking about that Diana maybe had dark reddish hair, but it looked to be mousy blonde or auburn. And so after the 1980s, when she met Charles and everything, and when she was working at the flat or whatever, not a flat, but nanny and a kindergarten assistant teacher, her mousy blonde hair and everything. Later, after she married Charles, then she got it highlighted and stuff like that. So you couldn't really tell anymore what color hair she had. But evidently, it's genetic that there's some red hair in the family. And he's not redheaded anymore. He's gray-headed. But some of his kids, I think, have reddish hair. Not all his daughters, though. They have blonde hair.
So this is the second Baron, William Spencer. He died in his mid-40s, and his wife, Penelope, is one of the great heroines of the family. She took over as widow, ran the house, modified the way it was, and made it all work very well.
So she was a real force.
She took on almost the man's role and did it extremely well.
Her father was Shakespeare's patron, big patron.
That's right. Penelope's father was the third Earl of Southampton, who is famous in English history as being the patron of William Shakespeare. She was his eldest daughter, and she married into the Spencer family. So a lovely connection to Shakespeare, who actually was born and died not far from here. Look at this. This is a little boy, William Spencer, third son of Richard Spencer, who died on the 20th of June, 1631, at the age of 5 weeks.
Oh.
But he's remembered forever by this carving stone, and his body would be below there. This is a monument to the family tragedy. They weren't callous about it. It was agonizing.
I think that Charles's passion for the history and how wonderful a storyteller he is what drew me into this.
She died very young, 1831.
All these people on the walls wouldn't mean anything. It's the stories and who they were that brings it to life.
I mean, I'll be dead down there one day, and it's very comforting to be in this place of eternal rest, I guess, surrounded by family, even though a lot of them are quite distant. One family in one place, held together over 500 years by the vision of Sir John and Isabella Spencer.
I find it interesting, though. He doesn't really speak so much about Diana. But obviously, though, when you see the drone fly over and everything, it's obvious that she's there on that little island. Her body is, at least. And I pray the Lord she's with him. You know, I don't know if she was Catholic or what her faith was exactly, but I do pray that she's with the Lord. So that'd be through my mind, because she was such a great person. She was just such a lovely person and everything. And it seems to me it would be great to know that such a kind, sweet, loving, compassionate person as Princess Diana. Was she perfect? No. I mean, she had a couple of affairs after the fact or before the fact or whatever, or whenever they separated, her and Charles. She wasn't perfect in that. You know, and there's some things maybe she shouldn't have done. She got duped in that darn panorama thing with Martin Brashear, and she let the fears of that man. She let him. He installed all those fears in her mind, and there was even some kind of fears before that, though, before she even met. It might have been where they were already talking to her ahead of time, you know, about Charles having the car, go, brakes go bad and stuff, and getting her killed. And it just kind of seems like hey, that's what really happened, but really, it was just one of those things that happened outside of that, I believe. And Martin Brashear wasn't really actually helping matters by telling her all of these kind of things and making her fear even more. I like whenever Prince William got on here and he just kind of unloaded on Bashir and everything, and kind of confirmed that. Let me see if I can find it actually. It might be on here. I just thought that was really interesting. Let's see if it's on here. Here it is.
I would like to thank Lord Dyson and his team for the report. It is welcome that the BBC accepts Lord Dyson's findings in full, which are extremely concerning. That BBC employees lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia, displayed woeful incompetence when investigating complaints and concerns about the programme, and were evasive in their reporting to the media and covered up what they knew from their internal investigation. It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said. The interview was a major contribution to making my parents' relationship worse and has since hurt countless others. It brings indescribable sadness to know that the BBC's failures contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia, and isolation that I remember from those final years with her. But what saddens me most is that if the BBC had properly investigated the complaints and concerns first raised in 1995, my mother would have known that she had been deceived. She was failed not just by a rogue reporter, but by leaders at the BBC who looked the other way rather than asking the tough questions. It is my firm view that this panorama programme holds no legitimacy and should never be aired again. It effectively established a false narrative which for over a quarter of a century has been commercialised by the BBC and others. This settled narrative now needs to be addressed by the BBC and anyone else who has written or intends to write about these events. In an era of fake news, public service broadcasting and a free press have never been more important. These failings, identified by investigative journalists, not only let my mother down and my family down, they let the public down too.
That was awesome. That kind of helped me realize a little bit more that she's gone, you know. So, you know, and the only thing we have is just a memory of her. And that's why I pray to the Lord. She's with the Lord, you know, her faith by the blood of Jesus Christ, that she had that faith. Being a sweet, kind, loving person that she is. There's a lot of people in this world who can be sweet, kind, and loving, but they don't believe in Jesus Christ. So, you know, and I hope she did. So anyway, but it seems like she did. But anyway, I just wanted to share these kind of things and let you see for yourself and all that and other. I don't know if anybody had seen these kind of things before, but it's really interesting to know, I think, the stance of Princess Diana and everything. And I don't know, they ought to be more sweet, kind of loving, compassionate people like her in this world. But it just seems like they're so far and few between, and that's what I pray for. Tomorrow I got a final hearing and everything, and my wife's divorcing me and everything. So I'm kind of glad about that. But at the same time too, I would love to meet somebody like her. I really would. And here lately though, I've been obsessed with her for some reason. I get like that sometimes, but here lately though, it just more. It seems like it's more than usual for some reason or another. And I remember when she died, I watched the funeral and this, that, and the other, and there are times and seasons when I really get into it and start digging in it, then I leave it alone, then I get into it, start digging in it, and I leave it alone, you know, things like that. And I've always based my relationships on people who are a lot like her and who pretty much had her same haircut, so, and everything. I've always liked women with pixie haircuts for some reason or another, but probably that. I just like the shortness of it. Anyway, I don't know. I don't mean to get into all that. But anyway, I thought I'd just share that. And this is going to be a little bit longer video than the one I made previous to this one, because it was like 40 minutes tops. This is like in 42, 43. So I hope y'all enjoy that and everything. And so I just wanted to share that. And I think it's pretty awesome showing a grave and everything on top of the island and not in the ground, because it's not to be water might leak into it. And Prince William's feelings on the whole matter. And also the thing with the cemetery, her not being buried in the vault of the Spencers, but on the island. All right, well, I'm getting off here. I hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll see you later.